Other miracles that happened. There were a few times, some of the stories of when they had absolutely no money. They had a great problem. They were having so many vocations, they were running out of space. They didn't have room for a lot of the seminarians and for the sisters that were joining. They were trying to build buildings. When they couldn't afford bricks, they would have, a lot of the boys would actually he set up a factory so they made their own bricks and were building their own buildings. But he knew it was God's will, so he knew it was all going to work out. There was one case where there was a Mr. Souza that he had a lawsuit against, who he owed a tremendous amount of money. He was a very wealthy man. He bought all these bricks from him before he started his own brickworks place. And he wound up going to court. And during this court proceeding, you can read the transcript of what happened in court. And Father Alberione told Mr. Souza, "I'm really sorry, you're right. I owe you this money and I really should pay it to you. I promise I'm just not going to eat until we pay it back." And he was such a skinny little guy. The guy said, "Please don't do that. That's all I need, and nobody will ever go to me." And he wound up becoming one of the great benefactors of the Pauline family after that, Mr. Souza did. This story is one of my favorites. They put this in, and I didn't draw these cartoons. These came from like a copyrighted book that I completely stole them out of. And I know I was supposed to get permission, but I'll worry about that later. But anyway, this one, there was a woman who worked there who volunteered her time because they couldn't afford to pay her. And he was getting so worried, she was bringing bills in, and he said, more bills. They had $4,100 worth. It was about the equivalent in however many lira that was at the time, $4,100. And he said, well, we need to pay this. Here, I'll put you in charge of the finances. I'm not doing it. And she said, well, where do I get the money? So he went and prayed for 4 hours. He fasted and prayed all the time. After he fasted and prayed, he came and called her in his office and said, go take the train to Turin and somehow you're going to find the money. And she said, well, what does that mean? And he said, I don't know, just go get on the train. So she gets on the train. She's trying to sit in a seat by herself because she's trying to pray and figure out what she's going to do. And she's like, I don't know if I should just stay in Turin and not come back because I don't know how I'm supposed to find $4,100. And a man gets on and said, can I sit here? And she was very reluctant and said, well, I'm busy and I have a lot on my mind. And he said, well, please, I am too. And he started talking to her, and they started talking about each other's problems. And he said, well, I might be able to help. He said, I've had some very good luck recently in business. And she didn't tell him how much money she needed, but he told her, I have $4,100 that I just need to donate to somebody. I need to give it to somebody to, just to make myself feel better. And so it was the exact amount she needed. So she stayed on the train and she got off and took the next train back and had the exact $4,100 that they needed. So I love the stories like that. Now, after the Society of St. Paul, the Pauline Cooperators, the lay group, was the next one, also started in 1914. Now, and actually, when Blessed Alberione writes about it, he did say that the Pauline Cooperators were actually the first of his thoughts, because he was thinking lay people getting involved was going to be the most important thing, and then the priests, nuns, sisters, brothers, those were all secondary. These are actually the Pauline Cooperators in Kenya. I did that for Jackie. So the Pauline Cooperators are all over the world. Laymen and women who wish to dedicate ourselves to the mission and ideals of the Pauline family, to provide help, inspiration, and prayers, mainly to help in any way we can with, like with the Daughters of St. Paul here in St. Louis, or nationally or internationally. Any prayers and sacrifices that we can make to help all of them, but for us to do the same thing, for us to live that Pauline charism, for us to be other Christs for other people, not just for the sisters and not just for the priests, not just for the brothers, but for everyone else, and for us to bring that to the rest of the world. One of the things in exchange, not only do we benefit then from all their prayers, actually, I don't know if you guys knew this, 2,400 masses a year are said just for the Pauline Cooperators, so I could use that. That's a great benefit. This is one of our heroes. This is Amalia Cavazza-Vitali. The story of how she became, we consider her kind of the first Pauline cooperator. Her son was in the army during World War II in Italy, and a lot of the seminaries had to give up part of their room to house soldiers. So part of the seminary where Blessed Alberione was living at the time is one where her son went. And her son didn't have a mattress to sleep on, and he was actually from Barbaresco Castle and was from a very well-to-do family, being at the Barbaresco Castle. So Blessed Alberione just decided that out of charity, he just said, here, take my mattress, I'm fine. Sometimes he slept on a couch in the refectory, sometimes he slept in the hallway, sometimes on the floor, but he let him have the mattress. When she found out how nice he was, she took a wagon there and brought another brand new mattress to give to Blessed Alberione to thank him. Well, he thanked her and was very kind, and then as soon as she left, he gave it to one of the other boys because he felt so responsible for these boys that he was supposed to be in charge of. So she kept sending more mattresses, and then he kept giving them away, and it became, she was finally his match, though. She personally brought the next mattress herself, and this was the finest mattress you could get at the time. And she said, remember, I am not giving this to you, I am only lending it to you. And I'm going to come and get it anytime I want, so you're not going to want me to come and take it from one of these boys in the middle of the night, but I can come and take it. So you are the only one who can use it. Do you understand? And he loved her ever since then. They got along great, and she became actually one of the first Pauline cooperators. Twice a week, she would send a cart with all these fresh baked breads, with coffees, meat, wine, any medicines, anything that they needed. Twice a week, she would send that over to Father Alberione and all the Paulines that were in his care. She learned that he wanted to build a little chapel in the house where they were at, and so this is the actual the chalice. It's a beautiful ornate chalice that she bought him. He used it for the first time on June 29th, 1918, which is, that's the anniversary of the starting date of the Pauline Cooperators. And he said that every time he held that chalice, he prayed for the Pauline Cooperators, past, present, and future throughout the world. And he did wind up using that the rest of his life. She wound up becoming a much more active member of the Pauline family. Her faith was really revved up. She edited, she helped read, she helped go over manuscripts, and she actually, before she passed away, wound up writing 2 books on her own about 2 Catholic books on the duties of daughters and the duties of wives and mothers. But there's talk of her being canonized one day also. So to be a Pauline cooperator means to be willing to be the primary evangelizers of today's culture, to not be afraid to, wherever you work, whatever you do in life, whatever your other vocation may be, to not be afraid to let people know that that Jesus Christ is the most important thing in your life, your relationship with him, and becoming him and wanting to mirror him more. One of the things that Blessed Alberione had said before is, when you die, and God the Father at your judgment is looking at you, he's looking for his son. He's looking for someone who looks like his son. So the more you've imitated him and the more you've let Christ become part of you, the more he recognizes you and sees his son in you. And that's what he wants from all of us. He talked about sin one time and said, you know, why is it that sin is so bad? Not only does, when we sin, you know, not only are we choosing not to do what God wants us to do, but we're purposefully separating ourselves from who Christ is. And each time we do that, it makes us look a little bit different from Christ. Luckily, we have reconciliation. We can go to confession. We can make up for that and regain that and become a son of God the Father again. But sin really does distort that total Christ that we want to live. It also affects the people around us, because when we sin and we look less like Christ, people see Christ less. So if you don't even think about, if you think about sin, well, this is something that's not hurting somebody else too much, or this is something, it's a bad habit, or this is something that, you know, I overeat because I'm stressed, or you know, I talk about people because other people are doing it. Still, you're making that choice to be less like Christ. You're less wanting to be that total Christ. And he is the way and the truth and the life, and that's what we want to mirror. So even if we don't avoid sin for ourselves, Father Alberione said it is so important to avoid it for the people around you, because it's harder for them to be more like Christ if you're not mirroring Christ for them. So if we don't want to avoid sin for our own sake, we should do it for those around us.